My dear students, greetings to all of you. Today we are going to discuss something about the third session on adrenocorticosteroid hormones. So here I'll be discussing something about mechanism of action of glucocorticoids and then pharmacological actions and then adverse drug reactions. Because adverse drug reactions are nothing but the extension of the pharmacological actions. So I have clubbed the adverse drug reactions also into the same session. So please pay attention. Whatever we are going to discuss something about pharmacological actions, the same thing apply to the adverse drug reactions. Okay. So let us enter into the discussion. Adrenocorticosteroid hormones. So in this session, I'm going to cover about the mechanism of action, glucocorticoid resistance, pharmacological actions, and adverse drug reactions. Coming to the mechanism of action, glucocorticoid receptors are widely distributed throughout the body, whereas mineralocorticoid receptors are distributed in salivary glands, sweat glands, kidneys, and colon. But both the receptors are present in brain. Okay. Then coming to the receptors that are present in the cytosol and also in the nucleus, involvement of cytosolic nuclear actions can give rise to genomic actions, which give rise to a delayed action or a delayed response. Whereas involvement of cell membrane bound receptors give rise to non-genomic actions, which can give rise to immediate effects, very immediate effects that we can see. So what happens whenever we administer the glucocorticoids is they enter the cell as free molecules and bind to cytosolic steroid receptors. Okay, in the cytosol, there will be steroid receptors to which these glucocorticoids will go and combine with them. Then this steroid glucocorticoid combination, that is the complex, translocates to the nucleus, and then that particular complex binds to the glucocorticoid responsive element in the regulatory region of the concerned gene, resulting in either activation or repression of DNA transcription, giving rise to genomic effects. Because it is the nuclear receptors, so they are going to give rise to genomic effects. So there can be a possibility of either repression of DNA transcription or upregulation of DNA transcription. So this repression of DNA transcription can give rise to anti-inflammatory actions of glucocorticoids, whereas upregulation of gene transcription with higher doses can give rise to undesirable effects or adverse drug reactions. So these corticosteroids bind to specific proteins in target tissues to regulate the expression of corticosteroid responsive genes, otherwise known as glucocorticoid responsive elements. Okay, thereby changing the levels and array of proteins synthesized by various target tissues. So as a consequence of the time required to modulate gene expression and then the protein synthesis, because they have to enter into the cytosol, then enter into the nucleus, then they have to get combined with the glucocorticoid responsive elements, then there has to be starting up of the protein synthesis in the mitochondria. So it takes very long time. So most of the effects of corticosteroids are not immediate. These genomic mediated effects, they are not immediate but become apparent after several hours. So if a question is asked to you in Viva Voce, glucocorticoid response, glucocorticoid mediated, receptor mediated effects, are they immediate or delayed? You have to answer that both types of actions are there. One is when they combine the cell membrane bound receptors, it is immediate action and they do produce non-genomic effects. Whereas when they combine with the receptors present in the nucleus, they do produce genomic effects, which are very delayed, which occur after several hours. Okay. But corticosteroids may exert some of their immediate effects by non-genomic mechanisms. That's what we discussed just now. So here is the process. Diffusion of glucocorticoids across the membrane of the target cell to bind to a glucocorticoid receptor heat shock protein complex in the cytosol. Okay. Then release of the heat shock protein and transport of the hormone receptor complex into the nucleus. Then happens binding of the hormone receptor complex to specific nucleotide sequence along the DNA, which is otherwise known as glucocorticoid response elements. This is nothing but specific nucleotide sequence along the DNA. Then happens decreased or increased accumulation of mRNA within the target cell, which can give rise to either decreased or increased transcription of genes coding for specific proteins, change in the rate of synthesis of specific proteins that carry out the biological actions of the hormones. So here we can see in this diagram. So this is cortisol binding hormone, which carries the to which the steroid molecule clings onto, and then because of this combination, it circulates in the blood. So here, the active form, which is free form, that is unprotein bound form, that enters into the cell, first into the cytosol. So here it will get combined with the glucocorticoid receptor, which also has the parts of heat shock proteins. Okay, so here the glucocorticoid receptor combination, this is complex is formed. Because of this instability of these heat shock proteins, they get dissociated from the receptor complex. So the receptor glucocorticoid along with the receptor, it gets dimerized. So this steroid receptor, which is dimerized, will enter into the nucleus. So here what happens, it combines with the glucocorticoid receptor element that is present, that is the nucleotide sequences that are present along the DNA. So it will get combined. So then transcription of the RNA starts. So pre-mRNA is formed. Then it will get, it will come out of the nucleus, enter into the cytosol. And then this mRNA will initiate the protein synthesis, which can give rise to further response of the particular cell or target tissue. Okay. So here you can see protein carrier, cortisol binding globulin. So this is free hormone, which is present in the blood vessel, enters into the cell. The cytoplasmic receptor, it may combine or may not. Then it will enter into the nucleus, combining with the glucocorticoid responsive elements, and then initiating transcription, producing mRNA, and translation process, that is protein synthesis, happens in the mitochondria or endoplasmic reticulum. So here another pathway is it can combine with the cell surface or cell membrane bound receptors, which can give rise to non-genomic effects, which are immediate in nature. Okay, is it clear? Then coming to the glucocorticoid resistance. Mutations, it is because of mutations leading to partial loss of glucocorticoid receptor function. So HPA acts as resets to a higher level to provide compensatory increase in the ACTH and cortisol secretion here. So because of the increased secretion, this mineralocorticoid and adrenocorticoid stimulation receptors will get stimulated, resulting in mineralocorticoid excess. Okay. Then it will result in hypertension and hyperkalemic alkalosis. Then androgen excess also can result in, because of this increase in ACTH secretion, which can give rise to the symptoms like acne, hirsutism, male pattern baldness, the menstrual irregularities, anovulation, infertility, precocious sexual development in children, etc. So the main mechanism of glucocorticoid resistance is downregulation of glucocorticoid receptors because of protein degradation within the cell. So it takes long time to show its actions. Then coming to the pharmacological actions of glucocorticoids. So before going to the pharmacological actions directly, we will discuss about the various sorts of effects that the glucocorticoids produces with the various doses. So physiological effects are produced at doses corresponding to normal daily production levels. This is physiological dose producing physiological effects. Okay. Then pharmacological effects are produced at supraphysiologic doses, little higher than the physiological doses. But both the effects are mediated by the same receptor. So the same, whatever the physiological effects are produced within the body, when we administer the glucocorticoids exogenously, the same effects can be seen as pharmacological effects. Then metabolic effects are mediated by transcriptional activation. That's what we have seen. Then anti-inflammatory effects are mediated by transrepression. That is also we have discussed. Then coming to the potency of steroids. Potency of steroids are as judged by their ability to sustain life in adrenal-ectomized animals closely parallel to those determined for sodium retention. That's what we discussed in the earlier session, that mineralocorticoids act as like life-saving hormones when compared to the glucocorticoids. So this entire process depends upon the sodium retention. This sodium retention property is mainly dependent on the mineralocorticoid tendency. Okay. Potency is based on effects on glucose metabolism closely parallel those for anti-inflammatory effects. Okay. Then permissive action of steroids. What is this? Let us see. Administration of small dose of glucocorticoid potentiates the lipolytic actions of catecholamines. So these effects of corticosteroids that involve concerted actions with other hormonal regulators are termed permissive. That means permissive means execution of action of other hormones only in the presence of glucocorticoids. Otherwise, they are not going to act. That is what is known as permissive. So here we have discussed about the potentiation of the lipolytic actions of catecholamines in the presence of glucocorticoids only. That means permissive action. They reflect steroid-induced changes in protein synthesis that in turn modify tissue responsiveness to other hormones. We'll be discussing about the when we discuss about the pharmacological actions regarding this permissive action, where does it exactly plays a role. Then other actions that we can see like permissive actions of steroids are calorogenic effect of glucagon, lipolytic effect of catecholamines, then vascular effects of catecholamines, and then bronchodilator effects of catecholamines. Mostly with the catecholamines, especially lipolysis, vascular effects, that is vasoconstriction, and then bronchodilator effects also can be seen along with steroid administration, which is otherwise known as permissive action. Then cortisol, it is otherwise known as emergency hormone. Why? So here, in case of trauma, infection, and surgery, where there is a major stress within the body, automatically there is increased ACTH secretion. It is a physiological reflex within the body. So it can give rise to increased cortisol secretion within minutes as an emergency hormone because of the stimulation of excessive ACTH secretion. Okay. So it can give rise to this cortisol. Soon after its release, it rapidly mobilizes fat and amino acids from stores, making them available for energy and synthesis of other compounds, including glucose and new proteins, which are needed or demanded in excessive quantities at the time of stress. So, because this cortisol is taking up that role of taking up the excessive demands of the body, it is otherwise known as emergency hormone. Then actions on carbohydrate and protein metabolism. Here starts with exactly the pharmacological actions of the glucocorticoids. So it protects the glucose dependent tissues like brain, heart from starvation by producing excessive glucose synthesis, that is gluconeogenesis, and then glycogen synthesis also. So apart from the excessive glucose synthesis from the tissues, there is decrease in utilization of glucose in the peripheral tissues, and along with that increased protein breakdown, that is catalytic action of the proteins, liberating amino acids, and also lipolytic action giving rise to glycerol. Apart from that, catabolic effects are seen, or because of the protein catabolic action, we can expect decreased muscle mass, atrophy of lymphoid tissue, and negative nitrogen balance, and thinning of skin even, which we can see in the Cushing syndrome, and then even osteoporosis, which can further result in fractures of the patient. Then anti-anabolic action can give rise to mobilization of amino acids by inhibiting protein synthesis in muscle, connective tissue, and skin. So glucose synthesis, glycogen synthesis, and because of excessive production and reduced peripheral utilization, and protein catabolic action and lipolysis also. So these are the main actions that we can see. Then because of the increased glucose synthesis, there is a possibility of hyperglycemic states, which can stimulate insulin secretion. But there is a glycogen deposition in liver by inducing hepatic glycogen synthetase. So what is the net result that we can see here at this stage is hyperglycemia, glycogen deposition after insulin secretion, and excretion of urinary nitrogen. So the patient will be exhibiting the manifestations like that of the diabetes-like state with protein wasting because of protein catalytic action, okay, on the protein metabolism. So because of this protein wasting, we can expect retardation of linear growth, especially in children, along with thinning of skin, increased capillary fragility, otherwise known as producing ecchymosis, and muscle wasting, weakness, and osteoporosis with bone resorption. So new bone is not getting formed. So we need to be very careful whenever we administer glucocorticoids in case of children. Then permissive role in the mobilization of fat from peripheral fat deposits by adrenaline, growth hormone and thyroxine, which can give rise to lipolytic effect. This is permissive role because of the involvement of adrenaline and growth hormone and thyroxine, which can give rise to lipolytic effect. So because of which lipolysis, so the fat catabolism happens. So there is a redistribution of body fat towards the fat from the adipose tissue will get transferred to particular areas, because of which there is redistribution of body fat towards back of the neck, shoulders giving rise to buffalo hump, then abdomen and face giving rise to moon faces, then supraclavicular area with loss of fat in the extremities, all over giving rise to a clinical picture like that of the centripetal obesity, whereas the peripheral areas like upper limbs and lower limbs are not that much involved with fat accumulation. Along with that, cutaneous stria on trunk will be there because of stretching of skin by excessive abdominal fat accumulation. So it induces overall lipolysis in adipocytes. So free fatty acids are going to get released here. So here you can see buffalo hump, then moon face, round face because of the excessive fat accumulation in the face. Then centripetal obesity. Are you able to see? This is centripetal. In the central portion is getting obese because of the excessive fat accumulation, whereas the peripheral areas, it is not that much. So this is the Cushing syndrome, where there is, because of the glucocorticoid actions, that we can see thinning of the hair, red cheeks, buffalo hump, supraclavicular fat pad. Here also the fat, excessive fat will be accumulated. Then acne, moon face, increased body and facial hair, weight gain, purple striae because of the excessive fat accumulation in the abdomen. So abdominal striae you can see, pendulous abdomen, ecchymosis resulting from easy bruising, then thin extremities with muscle atrophy because of protein wasting. Then skin and subcutaneous tissue will become thin, and then it also shows slow bone healing. So on a whole, it is going to produce the effects on glucose or influence carbohydrate and fat metabolism to ensure adequate delivery of glucose to the brain in need of stress, and increase gluconeogenesis and decrease peripheral use of glucose. On the fat metabolism, lipolytic action, it is also because of due to permissive action. So increase in free fatty acids can be there, and because of which redistribution of fat from the extremities to the trunk and face, giving rise to buffalo hump and the moon face appearance. Then on the protein metabolism, favors protein breakdown, catabolic action, and helps mobilize amino acids to the liver for gluconeogenesis. Okay. Then actions on electrolyte and water balance. This happens mostly with larger doses of glucocorticoids, that is at 300 milligrams per 24 hours. So it enhances the reabsorption of sodium. So mainly this action is most commonly seen with aldosterone molecule, which is nothing but a mineralocorticoid, but we do come across this action with up to certain extent with glucocorticoids also. And there is renal excretion of free water. So water goes away. Then potassium and ions also get excretion. Potassium ions also get excreted along with hydrogen ions. Then there is a possibility of decreasing in the intestinal transport of calcium by antagonizing the action of 1,25-dihydroxycholecalciferol, promoting calcium excretion through the kidney. So loss of calcium will be there from bones due to loss of osteoid formation because of protein wasting also. Then vertebrae and ribs show increased resorption, and osteoporosis can be the final net result. Then glucocorticoids also amplify the actions of parathyroid hormones. So here we can see aldosterone secretion will be there from the adrenal cortex whenever there is blood calcium, potassium levels rise within the body, along with hyponatremia. So this aldosterone targets on the kidneys, so renin will get released. So angiotensin, with the help of angiotensinogen 1, angiotensin 1 can get converted into angiotensin 2. So the net effect that we can see is because of the aldosterone secretion. So this is excessive excretion of potassium ions, and sodium is reabsorbed by kidneys. So both are balanced here. So here you can see hypotension whenever it is there, kidney will get stimulated, renin secretion. Angiotensinogen 1, with the help of this enzyme, angiotensin 1 will get converted into 2. So because of this, we can see cardiac and vascular hypertrophy because of the vasoconstriction. So systemic vasoconstriction we can see. And the patient will experience thirst sensation, so increased blood volume because of taking excessive quantities of fluids. And then adrenal cortex will stimulate it, which we have seen in the previous slides. So aldosterone can get released. So because of which there is retention of sodium and excretion of potassium. So pituitary also will get stimulated because of angiotensin 2, which can give rise to antidiuretic hormone, which will give rise to the same effects here. So then actions on CVS, that is mineralocorticoid induced most probably. So it is direct stimulation of cardiac output. Then it also potentiates the response of vascular smooth muscles to the pressor effects of catecholamines, again permissive action, and angiotensin 2 by upregulating the adrenergic receptors in the vessel wall. Then along with that, there is inhibition of metabolism of circulating catecholamines by inhibiting their extraneuronal uptake. This is again permissive action. So catecholamines will be there because of reduced uptake. So more availability of catecholamines will be present, which can give rise to vasoconstriction, then hypertension, and then CAD, coronary artery disease. This most commonly happens with prolonged therapy. Along with it, we can expect this stroke, atrial fibrillation, and interstitial cardiac fibrosis manifestations also. So this is because of the presence of glucocorticoids. In case of adrenal insufficiency, where there is no adequate quantity of glucocorticoids, there is no vasoconstriction, so vasodilatation will result, which can further result in vascular collapse. Then actions on CNS. So in therapeutic doses, these glucocorticoids will give rise to the euphoric manifestations followed by insomnia, anxiety, or depression. So if we go for higher doses further, there is a possibility of precipitation of seizures by lowering seizure threshold. Of course, this is independent of electrolyte changes in brain, as aldosterone does not lower the seizure threshold. Okay. Then coming to the actions on muscles, there is a possibility of muscle weakness of Addison's disease, which can be corrected by glucocorticoid administration. Addison's disease means glucocorticoid secretion is impaired. So in that muscle weakness, it can be corrected by glucocorticoid administration. But in case of hypercortisolism, also we can see the muscle weakness in the patients. So here, this is mainly because of steroid myopathy, protein wasting. Okay, so this is due to hypokalemia and muscle wasting, otherwise known as steroid myopathy. So here we can correct the muscle weakness in case of Addison's disease by glucocorticoid administration, but here the reason is something different. Then actions on GIT, there is a possibility of inhibition of secretion of prostacyclins, which are mucosal protective factors in a form of prostaglandins. Then increase in basal and nocturnal gastric acid secretion and also pepsin. So there is net result is peptic ulcer formation by suppressing the immune response against H. pylori. Then anti-inflammatory actions. This is very little bit something confusing. So I try to make it as simplified as possible. So please pay attention to it. So anti-inflammatory actions of glucocorticoids, let us see. So inflammation is a local protective response induced by injury or destruction of tissues. This you know already. When the tissue is injured by mechanical or chemical factors, some substances are released from the affected area, which produce series of reactions in the affected area. So glucocorticoids, whenever you administer, they prevent or suppress the symptoms and signs of inflammation such as local heat, redness, swelling, and tenderness. So in the inflammation process at the level of tissues, there are early phenomena and late phenomena. So early phenomena like edema, fibrin deposition, capillary dilatation, and migration of leukocytes into the inflamed area. And late manifestations like capillary proliferation, fibroblastic proliferation, deposition of collagen, and cicatrization. So all this will be inhibited by the glucocorticoid administration. Along with that, they interfere with wound healing also. So there is a possibility of delayed wound healing. But the fibrous tissue once formed before the administration of glucocorticoids, it is not going to get affected. Then there is a possibility of liberation of histamine, serotonin, prostaglandins, leukotrienes, and bradykinin from the damaged tissue. This is going to be combated with the stabilization of lysosomal membranes at high concentrations of glucocorticoids, thus preventing the spillage of hydrolytic enzymes from all these factors. So there is a possibility of because of which histamine, serotonin, all these factors are liberated, inflammatory mediators. So they result in vasodilatation and erythema. So because of glucocorticoid administration, they nullify this vasodilatation process because of the stabilization of lysosomal membranes, giving rise to vasoconstriction. And also, this vasoconstriction is also through permissive action of catecholamines. Then, because of this vasodilatation, there is a possibility of increased capillary permeability, which can be nullified by decrease in capillary permeability by reducing the amount of histamine released by the basophils and mast cells. Because this release is inhibited, glucocorticoid administration, vasodilatation is inhibited, and further capillary permeability is also inhibited, and further oozing of fluid from blood into interstitial space is also inhibited. So it produces all anti-inflammatory reactions. So here fibrinogen and protein leakage from blood, coagulation of the interstitial fluid, and non-pitting edema because of heart blood function, they also change. They also get changed. Then apart from that, there is a decreased IgE dependent release of histamine, leukotriene C4 from basophils at the sites of inflammation. Okay, so there is decreased capillary permeability also because of the glucocorticoid administration. Then topical application whenever you go for, it gives rise to decreased mast cell degranulation, giving rise to vasoconstriction. And there is decreased acute phase reactant production from macrophages and endothelial cells. Then decreased production of collagenase and stromalazine, and they also prevent the collagen degradation and hinder tissue damage. For the damage is hindered. So whenever we go for long-term treatment, there is decreased production of collagen, giving rise to decreased healing and repair. Okay, so long-term treatment can delay in wound healing. That is another adverse effect that we can come across. So here you can see activated lymphocytes stimulating macrophage, activated macrophage. So various actions it is going to produce. Collagenase with the help of this enzyme, collagen destruction, and elastase, elastin degradation or digestion. Then plasminogen activator gives rise to plasminogen, plasmin, and clot destruction and tissue destruction finally. So whenever we administer glucocorticoids, so this dots means inhibition of that particular step. So this one, all these actions are inhibited. So anti-inflammatory action it produces. Then apart from that, there is a suppression of pro-inflammatory cytokines and chemokines, which can give rise to like a decreased interleukins 1, 2, 4, and 6, and then tumor necrosis factor alpha. So decreased chemotaxis, because of which there is inhibition of synthesis of adhesion molecules in endothelial cells, and promote leukocyte localization and impair their recruitment to the sites of inflammation. So obviously anti-inflammatory action it produces. Then neutrophils and monocytes infiltrate affected area generally during the inflammation process. This can be nullified by diminution of chemotaxis and lysosomal enzyme synthesis. That's what we have discussed just now in this slide. So inhibition of pro-inflammatory transcription factors can be there, because of which inhibition of COX enzyme 2, cytokines, adhesion factors, and nitric oxide synthase, because of which there is decreased release of cytokines, interleukins 1, 2, 4, 6 from lymphocytes, resulting in decreased tissue damage and decreased number of T and P lymphocytes, monocytes, eosinophils, basophils in circulation. And apart from that, there is a possibility of inhibition of the release of arachidonic acid from phospholipids. This is the main first step, preliminary step in the pathway, by inhibiting the enzyme phospholipase A2. And hence, there is a decrease in the production of pro-inflammatory mediators like prostaglandins, leukotrienes, and platelet activating factor and related cytokines. So, this sort of anti-inflammatory effect of glucocorticoids forms the basis for their clinical use in many different conditions, which we are going to discuss in therapeutic uses. So, glucocorticoids here increase the synthesis of lipocortin 1 that has inhibitory effect on phospholipase A2. So, the preliminary action will be nullified or blocked and therefore inhibit the production of lipid mediators as well as inhibit genes coding for COX-2 enzyme. So, here you can see this is like from phospholipids, arachidonic acid is formed. This is the preliminary step, rate limiting step. So phospholipase A2 enzyme is utilized here. So glucocorticoids administration enhances the release of lipocortin, which is going to inhibit this phospholipase A2 enzyme. So this step is blocked. So further, the release of prostaglandins, thromboxanes, lipoxanes, and leukotrienes is inhibited. These are all inflammatory mediators. So net effect is anti-inflammatory action. Then, whenever there is a possibility of stress within the body, neuronal mechanisms get stimulated and stimulation of inflammatory and immune systems. So because of which cytokines like interleukins 1, 2, 4, 6 and tumor necrosis factor alpha will get released. So all these will finally result in cortisol release as a emergency hormone. So this emergency hormone suppresses inflammation and exaggerated immune mechanisms. So it is acting like glucocorticoids act like anti-inflammatory and immunosuppressants. So this therapeutic efficacy in inflammatory disorders is proportional to the glucocorticoid activity mainly. Okay, so here you can see the inflammatory cells. This eosinophils decrease in numbers because of apoptosis, and T lymphocytes, mast cells, macrophages, and dendritic cells, everything will get lessened in the number. And epithelial cells, so there is the decreased cytokine mediators release. Endothelial cells, the leakage of the fluid which happens in the inflammatory sites, that is also inhibited. Then smooth muscles, decreased cytokine production, and then beta 2 receptor stimulation also can be there. Then mucus gland, decreased mucus secretion. This is the action on the various cells that are present in the blood because of glucocorticoid administration. Okay. Then this is the final slide, summary slide that depicts the net anti-inflammatory actions. So I have depicted all the other slides which have discussed in detail step by step what happens exactly when you administer glucocorticoids for the purpose of anti-inflammatory action. So if you can write down this one, if you get like a question like role of glucocorticoids in the management of inflammatory diseases. So you have to write about the diseases and the glucocorticoids actions. You can first write down this detail about this slide, and then you can detail about this each and every particular major action which we have discussed in the earlier slides. Okay. So glucocorticoids, whenever we administer, what happens in blood vessel? Corticosteroids inhibit movement of WBCs into the injured area and the release of inflammatory cytokines. So inflammatory cytokines, interleukins, tumor necrosis factor alpha, all this will be, there will be reduced secretion. Then in the cell membrane, this happens in the blood vessel. In the cell membrane, what happens? Corticosteroids inhibit phospholipase and arachidonic acid metabolism, which decreases formation of inflammatory prostaglandins, leukotrienes. So phospholipase to arachidonic acid forming prostaglandins and leukotrienes, this step is inhibited because of the release of lipocortin 1. Then within the lysosomes, what happens? Corticosteroids inhibit breakdown of lysosomal membranes and the subsequent release of inflammatory mediators and enzymes. So inflammatory mediators like histamine, bradykinin, enzymes, all these will be reduced in secretion. So one is actions within the blood vessel, in the blood circulation, one in the cell membrane, one in the lysosomes. Hope it is clear to you. Then immunosuppressant action. I have given a mnemonic MLC, medical legal case. Okay, we'll see what is that MLC denotes. Glucocorticoids in large therapeutic doses like 40 to 60 mg of prednisolone per day. They inhibit the function of macrophages and reduce their ability to respond to antigen. So they affect phagocytosis and bactericidal action. So production of tumor necrosis factor alpha, some interleukins and interferons is reduced. So macrophage involvement and subsequent actions because of the inhibition of the function of macrophages, that is immunosuppressant. So M stands for macrophages. Then apart from that, there is inhibition of the activation of cytotoxic T lymphocytes. So lymphocytes, L stands for lymphocytes. This is again inhibition of their action and their proliferation. So transient peripheral lymphopenia because of the reduced in number. So associated with lysis of T lymphocytes. Then what is this? C stands for MLC. So complement is not affected regarding the synthesis, but its effects are inhibited. Apart from that, C means cell-mediated immunity, which is going to get suppressed. So suppression of cell-mediated hypersensitivity reaction with administration of glucocorticoids. So glucocorticoid doses that modify cell-mediated immunity usually do not suppress the antibody protection. That is, humoral immunity will not get changed. If it low dose is going to change the cell-mediated immunity or suppression of cell-mediated immunity, it is not going to affect humoral immunity. Then role in graft transplantation. This is mainly connected to the humoral immunity. See the dose here, very high dose. Large doses, that is 100 to 200 milligrams of prednisolone per day are administered to prevent homograft rejection. So this high dose diminishes the effective concentration of specific IgG antibodies. Previously, that was cell-mediated immunity at low dose. With high dose, it is humoral immunity is going to get suppressed. So there is no antibody IgG production and there is no interaction with the antigen and antibody. So there is no possibility of graft rejection. So this mechanism is used for the treatment of graft transplantation to nullify the graft rejection. So decreased antigen expression from grafted tissue, delayed revascularization, and decreased sensitization of cytotoxic T lymphocytes. So this is immunosuppressant action. You can have the mnemonic, that is MLC. M means macrophages and L means lymphocytes and C means that is complement and also the cell mediated immunity, and at high doses humoral immunity also gets depressed. Then anti-allergic action. Although glucocorticoids do not in moderate doses interfere with antibody protection, that's what we discussed just now, or with antigen antibody union, nor with the liberation of histamine from the tissues damaged by such union, they do suppress the inflammatory response to histamine at low doses. This last action is important in the suppression of such allergic phenomena as in the management of conditions like urticaria, allergic rhinitis, and bronchial asthma. Then actions on hematopoietic system. Increased RBC, platelets, neutrophils, and circulation, whereas decreased lymphocytes, eosinophils, monocytes, and basophils by redistributing them from circulation to lymphoid tissue. Okay, this is because of redistribution from circulation to the lymphoid tissue, we can see the decreased number within the blood circulation. Then apart from that, marked lytic effect on malignant lymphatic cells can be seen. This pharmacological action is used in the management of glucocorticoids in treating lymphomas. Then actions on calcium metabolism and bone. In pharmacological doses, glucocorticoids antagonize the action of vitamin D on the gut, and because of which there is reduced intestinal absorption of calcium. Apart from that, there is increased excretion of calcium through kidneys also. So excessive loss of calcium from spongy bones like vertebra and ribs can be seen. This is with pharmacological doses. So decreased absorption of calcium, increased excretion of calcium. Large doses for prolonged periods interfere with the development of cartilage development also. And they also inhibit linear growth in children. So it has to be paid much attention whenever you prescribe glucocorticoids in case of children, because they can easily produce large doses for prolonged periods. They can easily produce inhibition of linear growth in children, which is a very, very dreadful effect. Then, due to the protein catabolic action, glucocorticoids inhibit formation of new bony tissue. So new osteoid is not formed. So then the continuous resorption which occurs as a part of bone remodeling leads to severe osteoporosis in chronic states of hypercorticism. So new bone is not formed. Osteoclastic action or resorption is going to continue. So because of which there is net effect of severe osteoporosis and chronic states of hypercorticism. Then actions on respiratory system, they don't act as bronchodilators, but they do act as potent anti-inflammatory agents, but the actions are seen after 6 hours after administration. So here inhaled corticosteroids are mostly used for the long-term control of bronchial asthma. They maintain and restore responsiveness to bronchodilating effects of endogenous catecholamines. This is again permissive action. Okay. Then, so here you can see eosinophils, lymphocytes, mast cells reduced in number, decreased secretion by them, and decreased release of cytokines, and macrophages. So also they're also reduced in number, secretion, and cytokine release. And epithelial cells and mucous glands decreased mucus secretion. Endothelial cells, inhibition of leakage of the fluid from them. And airway smooth muscle, they enhance the beta 2 receptor mediated activity of catecholamines. Then inhibition of HPA axis, another dreadful pharmacological effect which turns into a major dreadful adverse effect with administration of glucocorticoids. It's very, very important. So small doses of any glucocorticoid, that is 20 milligrams of hydrocortisone, and high doses of intermediate acting glucocorticoids on alternate days, they show little or no suppression of HPA axis, hypothalamo-pituitary axis, okay, adrenal axis. Then when large doses are used daily or for prolonged periods, there is a possibility of HPA axis suppression, which is very dangerous. Suppression is most marked when the entire daily dose is given at bedtime because it is not paralleling with the diurnal variation, right? And is least when it is given on rising in the morning because it is paralleling with the diurnal variation. Then supraphysiological doses of glucocorticoids, if they are administered longer than 1 week, they suppress the HPA axis and cause adrenocortical atrophy. So here in the previous slide, we have discussed about, just recap, small doses, high doses on alternate days, no problem. Large doses for prolonged periods or even daily. Then here we have discussed supraphysiological doses for longer than 1 week. So it is also dangerous. So such patients during therapy and for long periods as long as 12 months thereafter are unable to increase endogenous cortisol output in response to stress. So HPA axis, because of these supraphysiological doses or large doses for long period of administration, this axis is going to get suppressed completely and it takes 1 year almost to recover so that the HPA axis can again stimulate and release the cortisol, endogenous cortisol within the body in relation to the response to the stressful situations within the body. So during the recovery, the possibility of recovery is in this order, that is recovery of pituitary function first, followed by plasma acid recovery in 4 to 5 months, and then the recovery of adrenal cortex, same HPA, okay, same order. So, but it takes 8 to 12 months for the recovery of HPA axis to be able to respond normally to stress. This recovery is not accelerated by the administration of exogenous ACTH. It has to get recovered on its own. So here, to avoid this inhibition of HPA axis, the precaution to be taken is physiological doses of glucocorticoid, that is 20 milligrams of hydrocortisone or 5 milligrams of prednisolone per day may be used for prolonged periods after cessation of prolonged large dose glucocorticoid therapy without interfering with recovery of HPA axis. So what I mean to say here is, if large dose glucocorticoid therapy is needed for some condition to treat some major stressful conditions, so what can we do here is, rather than going for prolonged periods after initial administration of large dose glucocorticoid therapy, we can bring down to the glucocorticoid administration to the physiological doses, the large doses, so that the maintenance dose can be continued with the physiological doses, so which will not interfere with the suppression of HPA axis. Hope it is clear to you. Then patients on long-term glucocorticoid treatment should be considered to be suffering from adrenal insufficiency because of the HPA axis suppression. So because of that, and during stress, the dose of the glucocorticoid should be increased because they need more, because there is no endogenous release within the body because of HPA axis inhibition. So here you can see I have depicted this slide in the previous session also. Short-term stress response, catecholamines are released, epinephrine and norepinephrine. Long-term stress response, glucocorticoids and mineralocorticoids are released, taking their role. So here glycogen, glucose availability, then blood pressure is maintained, breathing rate, metabolic rate is maintained with the short-term short stress response. And in long-term response, mineralocorticoids, sodium ions and water by kidneys balancing will be there, electrolyte and fluid balance. So blood volume will be raised and blood pressure will be raised, and conversion of proteins and fats to glucose with glucocorticoid administration, and immune system will be suppressed. This is how the stress response will be there with the release of glucocorticoids and mineralocorticoids. And whenever there is a derangement, we are going to administer dose during stressful conditions exogenously to get those effects. Then, so we are discussing about the stress. So steroid therapy during minor stress. Minor stress like febrile illness, severe exercise, sports of gastroenteritis with vomiting and diarrhea, and minor surgery. So normal adrenals respond by secreting about 100 milligrams of hydrocortisone per day. This then is requirement of hydrocortisone during such conditions. So minimum amount will be released. The dose can be abruptly reduced to the maintenance dose as soon as the stressful event is over. So if this secretion is not there endogenously, so we are going to administer externally or endogenously 100 milligrams, and soon getting converted to taking up the maintenance dose. Okay. Then during major stress like major surgery, severe burns and myocardial infarction, daily requirement of 300 to 400 mg of cortisol can be met. Whereas previously it was little less dose, 100 mg. So this can be overcome by administration of 100 mg by IV infusion every 6 to 8 hours on the first day. Then from the second day onwards, the dose is half every day till the physiological maintenance dose is reached. If the recovery is uneventful, if the recovery is or response is good, then you can reduce the dose and then taper it. Then while withdrawing long-term glucocorticoid therapy, the reduction up to the physiological maintenance dose may be as rapid as the disease will permit. This is a maintenance dose reduction, that is the tapering of the steroid or withdrawal of the steroids is based mainly upon the recovery of the patient. So too rapid a reduction can never, should never happen, because if you do the too rapid reduction of the glucocorticoid administration, it can either give rise to flare up of the disease under treatment or non-specific withdrawal symptoms comprising fever, malaise, myalgia, and arthralgia. So the patient will be complaining all these withdrawal symptoms suddenly if you withdraw the steroids from the body, or else the disease will get flared up. So after reaching the physiological maintenance dose, it should be continued up to 1 year in order to allow HPA axis to recover its function fully. So because in major stress we are using high doses, then bringing down to the physiological maintenance dose, because already if there is a possibility of HPA axis suppression, this physiological maintenance dose has to be continued for 1 year because there is no endogenous secretion of cortisol within the body. So this exogenous administration of the maintenance dose will take up the role of the endogenous cortisol. So any stressful situation is covered by large doses of glucocorticoid to prevent an acute adrenal crisis there. Patients undergoing surgery should always be asked for history of glucocorticoid therapy during the past 1 year to know whether there is HPA axis suppression is there or not. So whether they want to, if at all they want to administer glucocorticoids fresh, they need to uh, maintain on a minimal dose or physiological maintenance dose or higher dose, or even increase the dose because of the HPA axis suppression. Then choice of steroids in pregnancy. The placenta metabolizes hydrocortisone and prednisolone to the inactive cortisone and prednisone. So it is getting converted into inactive forms. But this happens in the mother. But unlike the mother, the fetus cannot convert cortisone and prednisone to hydrocortisone and prednisolone. So hydrocortisone will be there as it is within the fetus. So by contrast, dexamethasone, betamethasone cross the placenta to achieve high concentrations. These molecules are very potent. So they reach high concentrations in the fetal circulation and can suppress the fetal HPA axis, which is very, 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 very dangerous to the body. So absolutely these two molecules, which are very potent and long-acting molecules, are to be abandoned in the mother. So therefore, what should we choose? If a pregnant woman needs treatment with a glucocorticoid, prednisolone, which is the safest molecule, is preferred. Okay. Then miscellaneous actions: uricosuric, analgesic and anti-inflammatory and non-specific antipyretic effects, and then decrease secretion of thyroid stimulating hormone and growth hormone, and GnRH, LH and FSH also. But there is a possibility of role in maturation of fetal lump by stimulating the surfactant production by the administration of glucocorticoids to the mothers. So in a nutshell, on carbohydrate metabolism, increase blood glucose level by gluconeogenesis, inhibits peripheral glucose uptake. Then protein metabolism, catabolic action on proteins, increase plasma amino acid and protein content, and protein wasting can be seen. Then fat metabolism, metabolism fatty acid, that is lipolytic action from adipose tissue, distribution of the fat into the various areas, giving rise to Cushingoid appearance. Then increase in the concentration of fatty acid, increased utilization of fat for energy. Then mineral metabolism enhances sodium retention, potassium excretion, along with that water excretion also can be seen along with excretion of hydrogen ions also. Then muscles increase the release of amino acid from muscles, that is catabolic action of proteins, and blood vessels decrease the release of eosinophil in reticuloendothelial system, and decrease number of lymphocytes and increase number of neutrophils, RBC and blood platelets. Vascular response, constrictor action of adrenaline and noradrenaline. This is again permissive action of catecholamines, vasoconstriction producing hypertension and increased cardiac output sometimes. Then CNS actions essential for normal functioning, insufficiency causes irritability and loss of concentration. So these are the net effects which affect many target tissues like CNS, anxiety and memory is the result. Immune cells, anti-inflammatory and immunomodulatory, most probably immunosuppression. Bone, giving rise to osteoporosis. On liver, lipid and glucose homeostasis. On skeletal muscle, myopathy, steroid-induced myopathy because of protein fasting. And adipose tissue, obesity because of the lipolytic or catabolic action and distribution of the fats to the various tissues. Then cardiovascular, this is probably the net result is hypertension because of the vasoconstriction, permissive action of catecholamines. So biological effects, summary slide, that is nervous system, physiological homeostasis, response to stressors. So psychiatric disorders, this is the net effect that you are going to see, psychosis. Then cardiovascular system, anti-inflammatory, cardiomyocyte survival, homeostasis of blood pressure and vascular tone, and then anti-angiogenesis, so cardiovascular disease because of this various actions. Immunosuppression, suppression of inflammatory mediators and immune system. So then organ transplantation, rejection reactions, it is used. The musculoskeletal system, anti-inflammatory, and then muscle anabolism and catabolism, insulin resistance, osteoblast apoptosis, osteoclastogenesis. So this pharmacological action is used in the management of rheumatoid arthritis, but it gives rise to osteoporosis. Then actions on vascular system, anti-inflammatory, anti-angiogenesis, photoreceptor survival, giving rise to uveitis, keratitis, and glaucoma. Actions on respiratory system, suppression of cytokines, chemokines, and cell adhesion molecules. So this action is used in the management of asthma, bronchial asthma, and COPD. Then actions on glucose and liver metabolism, glucose regulation, lipid homeostasis, so giving rise to obesity and hyperglycemia. Actions on reproductive system, gonadal function in male and females is depressed. Fetal organ development and maturation is also going to get affected, giving rise to a possibility of preterm birth and gonadal excessive virilization. Then integumentary system, anti-inflammatory, delayed wound healing and regulation of epithelial integrity. So which is used in this pharmacological action is used in the management of psoriasis and eczema. Then coming to the adverse drug reactions. So we have discussed already that adverse drug reactions are nothing but the extensions of pharmacological reactions. So here we can see the classification of ADR, dose dependent and duration dependent. So dose-dependent ADR are nothing but hyperglycemia, hyperlipidemia, peptic ulcer disease, and psychosis. Duration-dependent ADR nothing but hypertension, Cushingoid changes, growth impairment, osteoporosis, osteonecrosis, that is avascular necrosis of bone, and enhanced opportunistic infections because of the immunosuppressant action. So short-term actions and long-term actions. That means short-term ADR that are seen with the short-term administration of glucocorticoids, and the ADR that are seen with the long-term administration of glucocorticoids. So cutaneous, here you can see acne, cutaneous manifestations like acne, ecchymosis, hirsutism, striae, weight gain, metabolic actions, metabolic ADR like hypokalemia, glucose intolerance, then myopathy, pancreatitis, psychiatric manifestations like mood alteration, hyperactivity, insomnia, psychosis, neurological manifestations like rise in benign intracranial hypertension along with seizures, precipitation, then hypertension, hematological manifestations like increased leukocyte count, transient monocytopenia, eosinophilia, increased erythropoiesis and thrombocytosis, and immunological manifestations. But with long-term administration, we can see Cushing syndrome, growth suppression, adrenal insufficiency, gastrointestinal manifestations like peptic ulcer and hepatic steatosis, and ophthalmological manifestations like glaucoma and subcapsular cataract, and hyperlipidemia and osteoporosis. So you need to write this table whenever you get a question on ADR. Okay. Then risk of ADR. This mainly depends upon dose which we use, type of steroid which we use, length of treatment that we prescribe. Dose means whether it is low, medium, or high, depending on the reactions manifest. Type of steroid, short acting or long acting, depending on the ADR manifest. Length of treatment, short or long, depending on the ADR manifest. Along with that, other medical problems also will get will be adding towards the ADR manifestations. So here, before prescribing glucocorticoids, we need to check all these things. There's like a checklist. So full history, including psychiatric manifestation, whether the patient is psychotic, exhibiting the psychotic manifestations, whether the patient is a smoker or chronic alcoholic, or whether on any drugs which exaggerate the manifestations. Then you have to measure blood pressure because there is a possibility of hypertension, measure blood glucose because there is a possibility of excessive glucose secretion within the body, and varicella, history of chickenpox, check antibodies. Then because of the excessive possibility of infections because of the immunosuppression, same is the case with tuberculosis, and osteoporosis because of exaggerated excretion of calcium and inhibited reabsorption. There is a possibility of uh, osteoporosis, so that you need to pay attention to, and there is a possibility of peptic ulcer disease, so you need to check out clear these two factors also, that the patient is suffering from both these things or not, peptic ulcer disease and osteoporosis. Then ADR, as we have discussed, they are nothing but the extension of pharmacological actions. So single large dose of prednisolone, that is 1 to 2 milligrams per kg, or equivalent doses of other glucocorticoids, is harmless. So single large dose can be used without hesitation in situations where life is threatened by adrenocortical or pituitary insufficiency or by cerebral edema. So you can casually can go ahead without any hesitation. Then short-term therapy, that is for 1 to 2 weeks with moderate doses, that is also harmless up to 1 to 2 weeks. But when it crosses 2 weeks, it is going to give harmful reactions. So prolonged therapy with glucocorticoids in higher doses, that is more than 20 to 30 milligrams of hydrocortisone or equivalent doses of other steroids per day, is liable to cause adverse effects. ADR other than sodium retention are shared by all the glucocorticoids, but only few glucocorticoids have this mineralocorticoid propensity, which can give rise to sodium retention effects. Okay. Certain ADR are seeming to be unique to the triamcinolone, like anorexia, muscle wasting, weight loss, sedation, and depression. So it should be avoided in renal disease, this triamcinolone molecule. Then two categories of toxic effects can be seen with glucocorticoid administration. That is, one is long-term high-dose therapy. Then another is because of withdrawal of therapy. One is for because of therapy, one is because of withdrawal of therapy. Okay, so because of withdrawal of therapy, we can expect flare up of either underlying disease or sudden acute adrenal insufficiency because of HPA axis suppression. And there is a possibility of pseudotumor cerebri also with intracranial tension and papilledema manifestations. Okay, so these ADR are most common in infants, children, and elderly, and with the use of occlusive dressings, which enhance the ADR with topical administration. Then, when used on areas like face with a thin skin, that is also with topical administration and with heavy dose into longer therapy. This we have already discussed. Then ADR on GIT. So that we have discussed already. So acute erosive gastritis and hemorrhage and bleeding, peptic ulcer, intestinal perforation, and pancreatitis because of the decreased synthesis of cytoprotective prostaglandins like prostacyclins, PGE2 and PGI2, and also NSAID usage. Okay, then prevention. This ADR can be prevented by minimizing the administration of oral steroids with food. Along with food intake, these GIT manifestations can be reduced at least. Then curative is use of antacids, H2 receptor antagonists or PPI. Even for the prophylactic purpose also, we can use this. Then metabolic effects, ketoacidosis and non-ketotic hyperglycemic hyperosmolar coma idiopathic diabetes mellitus. Because of the insulin resistance, we can see pseudo-diabetes mellitus stage can be precipitated. Hyperglycemia, glycosuria. So pre-existing diabetes is not an absolute contraindication to glucocorticoid therapy. So hyperlipidemia associated with hypophosphatemia, sodium and water retention, hypertension, and hypokalemic alkalosis. So prevention of hyperglycemia can be done with dietary measures, prescribing to the patient like a diet low in saturated fat and calories, and regular monitoring of blood glucose levels and HbA1c during therapy. And if it is still not responding, oral hypoglycemics or insulin sensitizers can be started. And apart from this treatment aspect, we can even reduce in the glucocorticoid dose if it is possible. Then prevention of hyperlipidemia. So most common manifestation is hypertriglyceridemia. So we need to check whether there is a family history of hyperlipidemia, diabetes mellitus, and hypothyroidism already present in the patient or not. So we have to advise low calorie, low saturated fat diet. And if it is not still working, you can go ahead with gemfibrozil or statin administration or even lower the dose of the steroid. Then prolonged therapy can give rise to central obesity with moon face and buffalo hump. So that is pink florid striae appear on the abdomen, hips and pectoral regions, and the skin may become friable even. So patient may get spontaneous ecchymosis and bruise easily. So it resembles like that of the Cushingoid. It's manifesting similar to that of Cushingoid, means excessive secretion. So Cushingoid is a manifestation. The prevention can be done by dietary measures because already excessive mobilization of fat to the various sites will be there. So we need to advise the patient to restrict the fat intake and enhance the physical exercise. Okay. So these are the adverse effects of glucocorticoids: Cushingoid appearance or Cushing syndrome appearance, euphoria, sometimes depression or psychotic manifestations or emotional changes, buffalo hump, hypertension, thinning of skin, thin arms and legs, muscle wasting, poor wound healing, easy bruising, avascular necrosis of femoral head most commonly, increased abdominal fat with striae in the abdomen, moon face with red cheeks, cataract, and benign intracranial hypertension. Then action ADR on CNS. Insomnia, benign intracranial hypertrophy, precipitation of epilepsy in children because of the lowering of the threshold. Then acute psychotic reactions may be seen. So wherein if you don't have the possibility of reducing the dose of the steroids, then you can treat the patient with the tapering steroid dose. That is one possibility. If it is not possible, administration of low dose atypical antipsychotics or mood stabilizers. Then actions ADR on CVS and renal system, hypertension because of salt and water retention. Then hypokalemic alkalosis. So because much of potassium will get excreted out. So treatment is with diet rich in potassium like fruits and vegetables, especially broccoli, and then carrot, etc., or potassium supplements exogenously also can be given. But here, more risk is seen with thiazide diuretics. Even though these thiazide diuretics in the management of hypertension, if at all we choose, they reduce the possibility of osteoporosis. So this is a benefit and this is the risk, hypertension. Okay. But all these manifestations are uncommon with dexamethasone, betamethasone, and triamcinolone. Okay. So we need to choose which molecule has got mineralocorticoid potency and for what purpose that particular glucocorticoid or mineralocorticoid that we need to administer to the patient to combat the stressful situations within the body of that particular patient. Okay. Then prevention of hypertension, sodium restriction, that is low salt diet we have to advise. Then choose glucocorticoid with low mineralocorticoid potential. That's what we discussed just in the earlier slide. So whatever the drugs that which have low mineralocorticoid potential, we can choose those drugs. If the patient is already having hypertension, then if still the patient is not responding, we can start with antihypertension therapy or even with mineralocorticoid receptor antagonists like spironolactone administration. Then ADR on eyes, local therapy can give rise to glaucoma, and long-term systemic therapy can give rise to subcapsular cataract, which needs, as soon as we prescribe glucocorticoids for a patient, we need to advise ophthalmological examination every 6 months because it is going to give rise to either cataract or glaucoma. Apart from that, other ADR manifestations that we can see are diffuse retinal pigment, susceptibility to infection, delay in corneal wound healing. Then ADR through musculoskeletal effects are myopathy of proximal limb and respiratory muscles, muscle wasting of limbs with fluorinated analogs, that is most commonly seen with betamethasone and triamcinolone. Then osteoporosis with compression fractures of vertebrae, which can be treated with biphosphonates. Bone resorption due to decreased calcium levels, and acute avascular necrosis of bone. And in case of pregnancy, if we use dexamethasone, we have already discussed that there is a complete suppression of HPA axis even in the fetus. Okay, so myopathy, muscle wasting, that is like because of the protein catabolism, most commonly seen with fluorinated analogs. So which we can think about like which has to be administered. Then osteoporosis, avascular necrosis of bone, and this osteoporosis can give rise to the fractures. Then high doses can even result in retardation of linear growth in case of children, which this point has to be paid much attention whenever we administer glucocorticoids in case of young children. In equivalent therapeutic doses, prednisolone is twice and dexa and betamethasone are thrice as growth inhibiting as hydrocortisone. Okay, this is a point of clinical importance. Then prevention of osteoporosis. So for this, we need to first of all estimate immediately soon after the administration of glucocorticoids, we need to estimate serum calcium, alkaline phosphatase, 25-hydroxy, cholecalciferol, and 24-hour urine collection of calcium. But here the bone loss that has occurred is never fully regained after stoppage of the steroids even. This is irreversible. We need to be very careful which glucocorticoid we are picking up and how long we are going to administer. So initial dose, loading dose, and maintenance doses, very, very important in steroid therapy. Then adequate dietary intake of calcium because calcium is getting excreted much. So administration of 1500 milligrams of elemental calcium per day, and vitamin D as cholecalciferol 50,000 units administration. Then in menopausal women, we can go ahead with hormone replacement therapy with estrogens. Then we can even go for, as we discussed in the earlier slide, that is biphosphonate administration, that is alendronate or etidronate, etc. Or even we can administer calcitonin or hormone replacement therapy. Then there is a possibility of another ADR, that is masking of clinical picture of disease, that is like fever and abdominal rigidity in acute peritonitis, because there is the patient feels a condition like a well-being, so he doesn't complain of all these things. So this is very, very dangerous. Apart from that, susceptibility to infection and reactivation of latent TB is also there because of immunosuppression, and poor wound healing also because of anti-inflammatory property. Then inhibition of HPA axis. This is seen with administration of glucocorticoids at supraphysiological doses for prolonged periods. Mainly, this takes 1 year for total recovery. So, how to prevent this HPA axis suppression? Because it is a very dreadful area. So, we can choose of short-acting steroids at lowest possible dose, or use of steroids for shortest period time, low dose, or shortest period of time, or entire daily dose to be given one time in the morning, making that of the diurnal variation so that it will not give dreaded adverse effects, or switching over to alternate day therapy after initial loading dose therapy. Okay, these are the steps, various steps through which we can prevent the HPA axis suppression with high dose therapy. Okay, so here you can see decreased glucocorticoid dose from supraphysiologic to physiologic. Suppose supraphysiological doses of glucocorticoids are needed for treating some particular major stressful situations, then immediately after recovery of that major stressful situation, immediately we have to switch over to the physiological dose as maintenance therapy. So switch to AM hydrocortisone or consider alternate day therapy. So to mimic the diurnal variation, administer in the morning time or go for alternate day therapy to reduce the ADR potential. Then measure morning cortisol level. Along with that, we have to measure the level. If the morning cortisol level is less than 3 micrograms per deciliter, then we have to understand patient is adrenally insufficient because very less secretion. So in such situations, we need to continue glucocorticoid therapy for 4 to 6 weeks. If it is 3 to 20 micrograms per deciliter, it needs further testing like insulin tolerance test, CRH stimulation test, and cortisone stimulation test or metarapon test. If it is more than 20 micrograms per deciliter, then we can easily think about that there is a recovery of suppressed HPA axis. Then we can immediately withdraw the glucocorticoid therapy by gradually lowering the dose. Okay. Then miscellaneous ADR like hypercoagulability of blood with thromboembolic complications, acne, hirsutism, loss of scalp hair, subcutaneous atrophy, delayed wound healing, anovulation, menstrual irregularities, weight gain, hyperlipidemia, hepatomegaly, pancreatitis, local skin atrophy with topical administration, and activation of Kaposi sarcoma, especially in patients suffering from AIDS disease, and Cushingoidism. That is also another manifestation. So rapid IV injection of large pulse doses can result in flushing of the face, chest, and also vasoactive reaction, cardiac arrest, and seizures also. It is very dreadful. Cushingoidism produced by glucocorticoid therapy differs in certain aspects from Cushing syndrome produced by endogenous hypercortisolism that we'll discuss. Then pseudotumor cerebri, glaucoma, cataract, pancreatitis, aseptic necrosis of bone, panniculitis, that is inflammation of subcutaneous fat, and vasculitis are almost unique to the iatrogenic form of Cushing syndrome. Then ADR to topical therapy. So here I would like to mention one thing. Till now we have discussed about the mechanism of action, pharmacological actions, and then ADR. So you may get question on anything, either mechanism of action, detailing about the pharmacological actions, and detailing about the ADR potential, or separately pharmacs question on specifically about the glucocorticoid induced suppression of HPA axis. Okay, what are the precautions that need to be taken? And this is another area where you get a possibility of question is like topical steroid therapy. So here we are going to discuss in the therapeutic uses, that is in the next session also regarding the topical therapy or topical glucocorticoids which are used to treat in topical conditions with topical administration. So I have discussed few points there and few points here. So you please try to combine both the points and prepare your own notes. So whenever you are asked a question like short note like topical steroid therapy, you need to write what are the drugs that are used and what are the advantages with that, what are the disadvantages with that, what are the precautions to be taken, and what are the adverse manifestations, adverse drug reactions uh, that can manifest with topical therapy. All these things you need to write. Okay. Adverse reactions to topical therapy is most commonly seen in infants, children, and elderly with the use of potent steroids, especially when used in large doses for prolonged periods. with the topical administration. It can give rise to topical area. And also, along with that, with the use of occlusive dressings. Occlusive dressings, that is, whenever you administer topical steroids and close the dressing, it enhances the topical area. And also, whenever you use these topical steroids on thin skin like face, so telangiectasia, all these kinds of manifestations will result. So most likely with high dose long-term therapy, and it will not only give rise to the topical manifestations of ADR because of the systemic absorption, it can also give rise to the systemic ADR effects. So that can be growth retardation in children, even with just simple topical therapy, which is very dangerous. Then adrenal suppression also can manifest just with topical steroid therapy because of high dose long-term therapy with topical administration even. So we need to be very, very careful while picking up or choosing a particular steroid to treat any disease. Okay. So how to prevent? Apply in a thin film and gently rub into the skin whenever you want to apply topically. Okay, thin film, not much. And don't use occlusive bandages, which can enhance the topical ADR. Then other ADR that are produced by topical therapy are acne, folliculitis, miliaria, telangiectasia, purpura, epidermal and dermal atrophy, hypertrichosis, hypopigmentation, allergic contact dermatitis, masking or aggravation of dermatophytosis, impetigo, and scabies, various skin manifestations that you can write on. Then steroids and pregnancy that we have discussed a little bit there also. Then risk of, there is a possibility, if you prescribe steroids in pregnant ladies, there is a possibility of cataract, interventricular septal defects, and cleft lip, hydrocephalus, lactation of aorta, low birth weight, IUGR, there is intrauterine growth retardation, and even stillbirth of the baby. So you need to be very particular which steroid you are going to prescribe in pregnant ladies. So the safest molecules are cortisone or prednisone. Prednisone is the safest molecule. If at all, the pregnant ladies need steroids, as they are inactivated by placenta. Whereas dexamethasone and betamethasone, they cross the placenta and reach the fetus in active state, they are to be abandoned. So prednisolone for pregnancy, P for P. Okay. So before prescribing, try to assess the benefit versus risk ratio, because we can't lose the baby with various defects because of steroid administration to cure a condition in case of mothers. Then, so in a nutshell, adverse effects: psychiatric, that is sleep disturbance or activation, mood disturbance, psychosis, skin and soft tissue, Cushingoid appearance, abdominal striae, acne, hirsutism, edema; neurologic, that is neuropathy, pseudotumor cerebri; cardiovascular, hypertension; musculoskeletal system, osteoporosis and aseptic necrosis of bone and myopathy; and endocrine manifestations like diabetes mellitus, adrenal cortex suppression; and immunologic manifestations of ADR like lymphocytopenia, immunosuppression, false negative skin test; then ophthalmic, cataract and narrow angle glaucoma; and developmental ADR or growth retardation, especially in case of children. So these ADR most commonly happen with prolonged use of high doses, whether it is systemic administration or with topical administration. So there is a possibility of Cushing's disease also. So physiological manifestations: adrenal, this is the summary slide again, adrenal or pituitary suppression; cardiovascular, increased blood pressure; GIT, peptic ulceration and pancreatitis; renal, polyuria and nocturia; central nervous system, euphoria, then followed by depression, psychosis and insomnia also manifest; endocrine, weight gain because of Cushingoid features, also associated with glycosuria, hyperglycemia, and pseudo-diabetic kind of state with insulin resistance; and impaired growth, amenorrhea; bone and muscle, which is skeletal, musculoskeletal system; osteoporosis, proximal myopathy because of protein wasting; and then aseptic necrosis of the hip joint resulting in pathological fractures; then skin thinning of the skin and easy bruising; then eyes, cataracts, including even with inhalation forms also; then increased susceptibility, infection like signs of fever or frequently masked, and septicemia, fungal infections, reactivation of TB, skin even. Okay. So how to prevent this ADR? So one simple mnemonic that I'll give: SHE. S for small dose therapy, H for high dose if it is needed, intermediate acting steroid that we need to choose, and along with that alternate day therapy. Okay. Then E means early morning time prescription. So she, small dose. If high dose is needed, intermediate acting preparation with alternate day therapy, and E for early morning time administration. So this is about the ADR that we have discussed till now. So here I would like to mention one thing. So anything can be asked in your exam. That is like mechanism of action, detailing about the pharmacological actions of glucocorticoids, or even just simple pharmacological actions and the ADR. So both are like extension of pharmacological actions is nothing but ADR. So ADR are various types that we can see, that we have seen already, that topical therapy, systemic therapy, that whatever that we have got extensions of pharmacological actions, which are more dreadful. So that we need to mention in detail way. So this is about the second session. Hope you understood the session properly. So if you have any questions, you can get back to me. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Vananda.